I was asked in June sometime to speak. And you always hear people when they're coming up to speak and they're like, oh, I panicked. And you think, why did you panic? I know now. I know why. So I spoke to God and I said, what do you want me to say? And he said, I want you to talk about what I've been speaking to you about recently. I like to study all sorts of things. I like to study the language of the Bible. I like to study. I'm a nurse. I nearly said by trade, I suppose it is. So I like studying. I like learning things. I like finding things out. So basically what he's been talking to me recently about quite strongly is love. I don't know what that is. Okay, so I just wanted to turn to 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4 to 7. I'll do this without my glasses. And it's talking about love. And it says, love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but it rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. And the love described here, when the Bible's translated from Greek and Hebrew, it loses some of the depth of the language because there's different kinds of love that are described in the Bible. They all use the word love, but the love described here is agape. So there are 4 types of love mainly in the Bible, and it's agape, which is God's love, deemed the highest form of love and is perfect, unconditional and sacrificial. Then you've got storge, which is familial love of your family. You've got philia, which is brotherly love, and eros, which is romantic love. We can't achieve agape all the time or most of the time by ourselves because it's not something we can understand, because when we look at the love that we have for each other, it's always conditional. There's always, when you get married, you say on your wedding day, oh, I will love you forever. And you just know that, my husband is just the best thing to ever happen to me. And then, you're married a wee while, and I still consider myself a newlywed, 8 years, nearly 9, feels like longer. And I do love Stuart, but I'll be honest, sometimes it's a choice. I love my parents, but sometimes it's a choice. You have to push past that. I don't have agape in me unless I am in a really good place with God. And I know the difference because people that know me well, there are a few here, know that I have worked really hard on when things come into my head that they don't come out of my mouth. But sometimes, most of the time, I'm still working on them being on my face. So my mouth might not say anything, but my face kind of goes, really? And that's not God's love. It's just not. And I know when I'm in a good place because I can hear myself saying these really loving, uplifting, kind things that are not in human nature. People talk about having faith in humanity. I don't, I have to say, because I'm a person and I know the battles that I have every day. So when we look at it, God calls us to love each other. I have a couple of scriptures if you want to follow. Leviticus 19:18, John 13:34. Jesus told his disciples that their love for each other would prove to the world that they were his disciples. So when we look at each other and when we look at how we treat each other and other people, are we displaying that love? If we are supposed to be disciples of Christ, if we are supposed to be, Christian means Christ-like. Have a look at yourself when you're in rush hour traffic and you're late because you didn't leave early enough. Are you Christ-like? Does Jesus roll the window down and help other people with their driving skills? We are called to love. And for me, one of the greatest things and one of the greatest privileges about having a relationship with God is being part of that love and being on the receiving end of that love. Nowadays, we are so justice and judgment minded. It's inherent and it's obvious from childhood. My kids are wonderful. And, Faith will be like, Mom, he hurt me. Josh will be like, well, she punched me first. Did you punch him, Faith? Yes. We automatically focus on things that affect us in our circles. Ephesians 4:2-3 tells us to be patient with one another, making allowance for each other's faults because of love. That is in stark contrast to human nature, because we are so aware of ourselves, and nowadays the world teaches us to be self-aware, and there is a real wisdom in that. It makes me laugh. The world talks about karma. That's actually the law of reaping and sowing. It was here first, but we'll give you that one. And I don't want anyone to misunderstand. This doesn't mean that we need to put ourselves continually in situations where we're hurt, where we're taken advantage of. Loving each other does not mean the absence of wisdom, but it does mean the absence of judgment. And let me explain why. Paul talks in Ephesians about the importance of unity, because the enemy loves division, hates families, hates marriages. He is literally a rain cloud everywhere. He does not want friendship. He does not want peace. So he causes division wherever he can, and the most helpful to him in that is us. Because he uses our core beliefs, and he uses our standards, and he uses our feelings to cause division. When we judge other people, we create division. We create an us and them. We cause an alienation. And we are repeatedly told in the Bible not to judge others and mind our own business. But this is where confusion can set in. And you often hear people, their arguments cause the Bible contradictory. It is very clear in the Bible about not judging others. It's very clear about loving each other. The difference is that over time, religion has set in. Judgment of people is an evolution of religion, and I say evolution because it was not a creation of God. Religion has stunted the growth of the church unbelievably. It's horrendous. God did not create religion. He wanted relationship, and we hear that a lot in our church. He wants relationship. He wants you. He wants to know you. When it gets crossed over, we start to confuse people with sin. And that's the bit that causes difficulties, because we're told throughout Scripture as well to put to death our earthly nature. So sins, Colossians, we're told to avoid sin, recognize it and run from it, avoid it at all costs. You can't underestimate what sin does. It's very real and it's dangerous. But Romans 3:23 says we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And I think sometimes we forget that we're all in the same boat here. Sally, you and me's in the same boat. The same as somebody else out there that heard about God at one point but isn't interested. And the difference is I know God and they don't. I have insight, or should have insight, into my life, my sins, how I walk. Out there doesn't. So I can't stand here and shout at somebody out there for doing something wrong when they do not have full insight about the cost and the freedom that's available. And we're given 10 commandments. And throughout Scripture, we have guidelines for how to conduct ourselves. You often hear Pastor Billy talking about the sat-nav, the Bible, as a guidance. And over time, these guidelines and standards which have been given to us to live by have been used instead of guidance for us to try and live our lives right and to keep right in the eyes of God, as some sort of an entry exam to church. As an entry exam to if you're good enough to come in. And the world sees Christianity as an unattainable height of self-righteousness, and we are guilty of that, of setting standards high, because what are we putting out there? What are Christians famous for? What are we famous for? We're supposed to be famous of, we are told, to go and spread the good news. That's the good news about love and about what God can do for us and how he can change us. And that's just not what we're seen as. We're misrepresented by ourselves. How many times do we walk down a street in Belfast or we're handed a leaflet about going to hell with somebody yelling over a microphone about hell and damnation, which are completely real and are valid points, absolutely. But is that the point of Christianity? Is it just to avoid doom? Or is it to live in the freedom and the joy of Jesus Christ, to live life to the full as an exciting adventure, watching our own and others' lives be changed by the love of God? That is the point. I'm not minimizing hell, I'm not minimizing sin, but for goodness sake, if somebody starts screaming in your face about all you're doing wrong, are you going to spend time with them? No. The world has evolved into such a state of sin. And the church, I have written this, you stole my message. The church has hidden itself in buildings, and instead of shouting about the transforming power of God's love, we are shouting about sinners in hell. I know I'm a sinner. I'm also an eater, but I'm not food. I am a breather, but I am not air. I am not my sins. Nobody is their sins. They are separate. Our God is a God of love who sets captives free, heals the brokenhearted, brings healing to bodies and families. He loves us beyond what our tiny brains can understand, because all of our versions fall short. All of our love experiences fall short. We are supposed to be emulating and showing the love of God to other people so that they can see a kind of love that they can be safe with. Mental health is a massive, massive issue at the minute. There is so much depression, low self-esteem. It's horrendous. There's such a darkness, and we are supposed to be the light. And how do you counter darkness? Is that you are light. Light is this. It's not, let me lift my Bible that's super heavy and thump you with it. I've been called a Bible thumper before. I do not thump my Bible, I look after it. But if we could just get that across, that it's not about that. It's, if you knew of the most amazing place ever, with free food, soft play for the children with all minders, so you have 3 hours of peace, all your own favourite food that's tailored to you, your favourite music playing, and the people that you would most want to ever have in a building. Would you tell people about it? Yeah. You'd want them to experience this too. You'd want them to have that freedom. We are not called to fix sin, but we are called to spread God's love. God showed me a picture when I was studying this, and it was of like, it looked like a hospital, and it had a big sign out the front that basically said, God heals everything. And these people came by, and they were decrepit and just laden. Some of them, I mean, I'll not go into details because I'm a nurse, and these things don't bother me, but I'm told by non-nurses that details of gory things bother them, so I'll not. But they had, it looked like all these wounds, open wounds, and legs hanging off, and they were just wrecked people. And they weren't clean, and they weren't polite, and they were shouting to try and get in. And there was a line of Christians in front of this hospital saying, you can't come in here with that. This is a hospital. And I was like, oh. And I just cried. I was so brokenhearted when I seen that. I said, what is this? How do we get rid of sin? We bring it to God. How do we get to God? By being led through Christians, people of the light. And we are so focused on the symptoms. We're so focused on what we see that we don't like, that we forget the person. We don't see the person. I remember being taught, I call it hula hoop theory. It's probably not much of a theory. We all live in a hula hoop. And that's your hula hoop. And you are completely 100% responsible for what happens in that hula hoop. If somebody else in their hula hoop comes over and punches me, that's their hula hoop. But if I react back, that's in my hula hoop. Jesus did not tolerate sin at all, but he loved people. You constantly read about him going past these social boundaries that were back in the day. And it gives me a giggle. He laid hands on lepers in Matthew 8 to heal them. Now, the church at the time would have been like, you are unclean. You touched a leper. He'd have been ostracized. Try to ostracize the Son of God. Good luck with that. He healed people on the Sabbath in Matthew 12. Shock, horror on the day of rest. And he always had a great answer. You know, if somebody, if your cow fell into a hole, would you say, sorry, love, it's Sunday? Can you see that in A&E? Closed. It's Sunday. That's a really good example of where religion overtakes relationship, where we miss the point. In John 4, he spoke with the woman at the well who had 5 husbands and was living with somebody else. What did Jesus do? He told her enough about herself that she knew he was somebody. But he told her what she needed to know to get saved. He told her the way out. He gave her the door to get to the place where she needed to be. He had dinner with Zacchaeus. I remember singing about Zacchaeus in Sunday school. He was a very little man was he. And he climbed up a tree. Now everybody hated Zacchaeus. He was a tax collector. Oh, he was like worse than a parking attendant. No offence, the parking attendants. God loves you so much with your watching the clock when you know that it ends at 9:14 and you're just there at 9:13. Anyway, God loves you so much. It's great because when you're reading this stuff and when you're studying it, God shows you loads of areas that you need to work on. So when he seen Zacchaeus, the tax collector, he's like, I'm coming to your house for dinner. And you could almost, when you're reading it in the Bible, you can almost hear the collective, oh, no. Did you see that? Did you see who he's talking to? They were disgusted. I love that. I love how disgusted. Now, they were there to hear Jesus. They were all there to listen to him. They were all following Jesus. But as soon as he went out with their wee small thinking, they were just horrified. And in all of these cases, Jesus saw the person, not the sin. He saw the person. And we should be looking at the person. Can you imagine getting to heaven and God having to speak to you about people that didn't get in because you were so busy looking at what they were doing that you didn't push through and show them what they could be doing? We make excuses for sin and we compromise. God has laid down standards, especially in this day and age. You can't compromise. You can't make excuses. You can stand by your beliefs and love other people without making them feel worthless or rubbish. It's entirely possible. This is illustrated beautifully in John 8, verse 7. The people brought a woman before God to be stoned to death because she'd been caught in adultery. You can hear the baying mobs. Jesus said, whoever has never sinned, go ahead. Well, first he ignored them and he just kind of was writing in the sand going, well, I'm sure he didn't roll his eyes. He says, whoever has never sinned, go ahead, throw the first stone. Nobody moved. You knew they were raging because they wanted justice. But nobody had the authority to do that. We all have the power. We can all throw stones at each other. We can all take chunks off each other. It's what we do. It's human nature. But none of us have the authority. because the only one that has the authority to do that judgment is God, and it is coming, and it's coming on us all. Don't get me wrong. I am not in any way undermining the fact that we all have a judgment day. But for me, it's not about avoiding that. It's not about, running and just sliding into home base there in the last second. Get in, I'm good. That's not how it works. Jesus told her to go and sin no more. So he saved her from the judgment of a people. But he didn't say, oh, that was a bit mad, wasn't it? He says, don't sin anymore. Don't do it anymore. When we do not separate the person from the sin, we are actively saying the price paid on the cross wasn't enough. We are disrespecting and undermining the price that was paid on the cross, because it was paid for us all. And when Jesus died, he died for us as sinners. He didn't die for us as the saved, as the good ones. We don't have rights to forgiveness by ourselves. That's not how it's supposed to be. And I think that's where it gets difficult, because oftentimes we give more weight to the sin than the person. And to explain that better, that's so much harder when it's a personal wound. When we have been hurt badly, to forgive a person does not minimize what they've done. It does not say their sin was all right. It is accepting the power of the cross as undeniable, wherever it is, for whoever it is. We're very quick to accept forgiveness ourselves, but that goes out the window when somebody does something to us. And as I said, it's inherent from childhood. When somebody hurts us, we're like, oh, you hurt me. Then we'll go and we'll tell somebody else. They hurt me. My children, I seem to be the only one there all the time, come to me. Yesterday, Faith breathed on Josh. I mean, it was his air because it was on his chair. It was where he was sitting. It was rightfully, we have room in our house. She could have breathed any other air. But she deliberately breathed his air. And the horror, it caused wars. And I had to push past that part of me that's going, really, though? Just go somewhere and play. And I had to try and work that out in a godly way, which isn't always forthcoming with us. It's a hard topic, the forgiveness one, and I'm not going to go into it today because it's a whole topic by itself. And it needs properly explained to give the weight to it, to give the understanding, because a lot of times it's misunderstood, where you think the hard part of accepting that God's love covers all, there are some sins and some actions that are just horrendous. And there's further teaching in that, and there's further understanding in that I don't have time to go through today. I would say, though, if you have been hurt, go to a trusted person, go to leadership. Be careful who you take your wounds to. I remember somebody saying to me years ago, some people only lick your wounds because they like the taste of blood. So I would be very careful. And the best person to take it to is God, but that requires a relationship. That requires an understanding of how he works. I have a small circle. I keep it small. And I have friends, and I don't think any of the majority of my circle go to church. But when things go wrong, they tend to call me. And I can tell you now, it's not because I'm wise. I don't have great ideas. I don't have solutions. I don't. But what I do is I go and I say what God tells me to say, and I be who God tells me to be, in the hope that some of that goes through. And I pray with my friends. It's funny because they don't, not only do they not mind, but when you pray for somebody and you're able to show them the love of God, it's not, oh God, help this person, see you later. It's really sitting with them and calling down that presence of God that gives such a peace that you don't get anywhere else. God's love is so powerful. It washes sin white as snow. It purifies, it heals. And we have the ability to share that with the world. We have the ability and the right and the authority to show other people what God's love is, be it through testimony or through our actions. That is why it is so important to spend time with God, to cultivate that relationship so that it comes out of you. We hear love conquers all, and it doesn't. Our love doesn't. The love you have for your partner on your wedding day, I can tell you now, that is not a daily thing. That doesn't last forever. It doesn't mean I love him any less. It just means I'm a person, and human love that we have, anything less than God's love, just doesn't last forever. That's the difference. Don't panic, Graham. Graham and Kathy have just got married recently. It's fine. Jesus died on the cross. It wasn't the death of one guy attempting to be a sacrifice. The Bible talks about sacrifices all through it, with animals and things to try and atone for sin. It was the fact that it was the Son of God who chose, out of a love that we don't understand, to give everything we had. And he died because he stood and accepted the weight and the price of all the sin in the world. Not just up to that point, not just around that area, not just up to now, but every sin we'll ever do. Every sin anybody will ever do. It was the weight of that. And sin does cause death. It killed the Son of God. Don't underestimate it. But when he took on that sin, he died, and it was the purity of the love he had. Isaiah 53 tells us what Jesus took on. All that sin was laid on him, past, present, and future. And it was this act that shifted the spiritual balance and allowed us to bring our sin to God, to be set free, instead of that sin stopping us. It was that price that was paid. This is why we must actively work at keeping ourselves right, not judging, not taking offense. By the way, offense is a sin. This is a hard one for me. I will be transparent in front of everybody. I have this. We all have, most of us have this sense of justice in us. And when somebody impinges our sense of justice, somebody might be doing something on the TV or walking past you. None of my business. See that? Or mine's terrible. I've got really good at not doing it now because I get the odd wee slap there. But you pull a muscle rolling your eyes at somebody. And we have to stop that. We have to stop this judgment. When you be like that, you're sinning. It's hilarious. It's like a catch-22. When you get into a position where you think you're better than somebody else, which I have been in many a time, because when I was 15, 16, 17, I knew everything. I knew it all. God loved me. Don't know about you, but he loved me. I justified my behaviour. I have witnesses in this room to what I was like when I was around that age. Some people will blindly say I'm wonderful. Thank you, Sally. But there are other people in this room who got front row seats to anger, to bitterness, to rage, to bad behaviour, to rudeness, to complete disrespect. I did what I wanted to do because I was hurting. So there. How childish. We still do it now at times. You think I'm bad now? I am so much better than I was. Because I justified my behaviour on the fact that I had this understanding wrongly that God would forgive me because I was hurting and he loved me. But I didn't actually extend that out to people out with my wee circle. And I was a horrible person. Horrible. I'll not go into it because let's try and not remember. But who I am today is far from perfect. I roll. I still hear my breath going, ugh. And I try my best not to. But it's not a one-day fix. It's not a case of, oh, I feel great today, I'm forgiving everybody, I love everybody. Then you go to sleep, then you get up, then you get a text message, and you're like, who does he think he is? It's a daily thing. I mean, I don't know about your house, but I clean my house all the time, but you don't know. You can't tell. Because you hoover and you clean. I take pictures. If my house is really clean, I take pictures because it never lasts. And I try and clean at night time, and then I sit in it for a wee while. I mean, by the time I'm finished, it could be 1 o'clock in the morning, which is ridiculous, but I'm sitting there going, oh. Because I know when my cherubs wake, my house is going to look like I've been burgled. I actually know somebody that their house was broken into. I'll name no names. But it was they only just slightly get in through the front door. Smash the window, get in through the front door. And they didn't actually get to take anything because somebody shouted and the police were called. But when the police arrived, the house was a riot. And they says, oh, I'm really sorry. They've done quite a lot of damage. And the person looked round their home, knowing fine well that's how it was, and went, oh, it's awful. She's not here. But our partner in crime that was there at the time is here and knows full well. We are very good at passing it off to somebody else. It tells us in Matthew 12 that out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So when I was hurt and I was angry and all I had was pain and all I had was rage and injustice, that's what came out of my mouth. I mean, I look back now at the way I treated people. Don't get me wrong, I could behave in public most of the time. But the way I treated people, because I felt I had the right to do that, I then had to go the whole way back through that and talk to God and offer it up. And I've had to ask forgiveness for the way I got on. I had the power to do it, to behave like that. Human nature would say I had every right to behave like that. But that's just not how it works. It's tied in very closely with Proverbs 4:23 that says, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. And for me, when I read that, I got like a new understanding of that, because I used to think, guard your heart in case anybody hurts it. But actually, the main people that put stuff into our hearts is us. We allow it in. You are the gatekeeper of what goes in. So when you step into that place of, they have hurt me and they deserve to be paid back, that offense, that disgust, that self-righteousness, because we are righteous in God's eyes. But when you start getting self-righteous, that's a whole other ball game. So we need to be very careful, because if we allow bitterness, self-righteousness, hatred into our hearts, that's what will come out of our mouths. And that's all very good and well if you live in a cave and you have no responsibilities. But if you look back, we have been told to go out into the world and proclaim the good news. If you are spouting venom and shouting about anger and bitterness, that is not the God we serve. It misses the point. We have an opportunity to show God's love. I mean, prison ministries, there's an apostle, Jennifer LeClaire. She went through some horrendous injustice in her life. She ended up in prison. She wasn't saved. And this preacher guy came around and spoke to her. And she got saved. She also got out of prison because the wrong that was done to put her in the first place was righted. I think she spent 40 days in prison. God told her she would spend 40 days don't know if she even knew he was talking at that point, because, like I said, she wasn't saved. But she dedicated her life to Christ, and now she has a massive ministry working around the place. Prison ministries are amazing. I love them. That could be the only chance. I mean, but they're criminals. Moses murdered a body in rage. David, the only one in the Bible who's described as a man after God's own heart, seen some girl he fancied, had an affair with her, like that's not bad enough, sends her husband out to get murdered. I mean, if that's not, who needs TV? But then you look at Psalms that David wrote, and you look at how God used him and how he moved and the lives he touched and the people he saved. He was amazing. But the difficulty is, he was human. We're all human. We are all going to hurt other people because we're not perfect. We're all going to be hurt. But we need to separate the two between the soul, the person, and the sin. That wouldn't have happened if you'd have went, look at them. Or if you'd have flung over and started Bible bashing at them. What was that, God's love? No. But what you did is you spent time with them. You cultivated relationship. You showed them the friendship and the love of God. And look at the presence of God falling on that. That is what it's for. And we're not just talking about, when you say, are you saved? We all think we're talking about being saved from hell, which we are. But if you look around you at this world, there is so much more we need saved from before that. There is so much more we need lifted out of and rescued from. I need rescued from myself all the time. Because how many times does God tell you to stop doing something and you'd be like, yes, Lord, I'll never do it again. I mean, I hear it in work. And the girls are like, oh, I'm never drinking again. And by lunchtime, they're going, well, we'll go out. I think the important thing is that we are all human. We make mistakes. But God, when we spend time with him and when we read his word, we become like him. And a lot of times that is misrepresented, and don't spend time with sinners because you'll be like them. If you're becoming like somebody you're trying to minister to, that's your issue, because it's in your hula hoop. So if you find yourself getting drawn down a route with somebody else's behaviour, that's something you need to address. It's not their fault. And yeah, there's a wisdom, and if you keep going to pray with your friends and end up doing stupid stuff all the time, stop going out with them for a while till you get the balance right. It's not their fault. They don't know better. It's your fault, because the responsibility lies with those that have the knowledge of what it is. We have so much knowledge here. We are supposed to be the light. How many times do we hear about churches splitting? How many times do we hear about rage in the church? How many times do we hear and see judgment getting hammered to each other? I am forever telling my children, stop fighting. You're supposed to love each other. They do love each other. Just keep punching each other. More so, Faith. But we are to be an example. So in a world where everybody is made to feel like they need to look younger, lose weight, be smarter, wear nicer clothes, you will be the best version of yourself if you spend £600 on these shoes. What do? Do they clean my house? Do they feed my children? No. We are always told to better ourselves. And yeah, there's wisdom in that, better yourselves, but in a world where we are constantly being told we are not good enough as we are. Jesus died for me knowing what I was going to do. He knew. Doesn't like it. he doesn't do sin. When I was looking at this, I said to God, when I was looking, but I had to go back and do a bit of self-reflection, which is always painful, but always very, very good. It's good for you. It's accountability. And I said, God, do you not just think sometimes I'm so hard to love? He went, no. It's never hard to love you. Don't like your sin. Don't like what you're doing. Don't like your attitude, your behaviour at times. But it's never hard to love you. And I thought, there's the difference. There's the difference. We need to be looking for the good in people. And again, yes, we're all sinners. Yes, we have sin. But if you are in a relationship and your partner constantly goes, I don't like the way you do that, stop behaving like that, you're doing this, you're doing that, that's actually called an abusive relationship. It's emotional abuse. So are we spreading the love of God? Are we showing people that love actually covers all of these things? Or are we just pointing out all their faults that I'm pretty sure most of them are aware of because the world tells them enough? There's such an underlying feeling amongst the world about, when you think of when you get saved, there's always that, I need to tell people I'm a Christian. If you won the lottery, would you be like, this is really hard? What if they judge me for being a millionaire? It's the same thing. When you have the door and the key to life, why are we not telling people about this? Why are we pointing out what happens if they don't? And it is hard. Like I said, it is hard when there's been personal injury and you've had to walk through a season of pain and of healing. But that love that covers that is the same love that heals. For example, can you have a show of hands for anybody that's been healed of anything, either physical, emotional, or any other way in this room? Has anybody found peace in the midst of disaster? There we go, a few hands. Peace. Doesn't mean the storm's not there. Doesn't mean that you're not hurt. It doesn't minimize what's been done to you at all. That's in their hula hoop, and they need to deal with that. It's not a case of, we tend to allow some sins and we don't allow others. Depending and what we judge it on is how it affects us. And it's got to the stage now, I know when I'm in a good place with God. As I said, it's a continual process. I know when I'm in a good place with God, because instead of me getting angry at people hurting me and saying mean things, because I can be quite sensitive. When you say mean things about me, it's not nice. But I know I'm in a good place because I find myself crying out unto God to have mercy on the person that's saying it. Because I know the price that they have to pay for that. And it's not one I ever want to have to pay myself, no matter what they've done. David, throughout the Psalms, asks God to search his heart and forgive him. He's always asking for forgiveness. Always. And we need to meditate in the Word of God, rest in his presence, talk to him. In his presence is fullness of joy. When is the last time you really felt joy? I'm not talking about when you see something funny on the internet and you be like, it's funny. I mean the kind of joy where, a good example is my mum. When my mum laughs, you just walk away from her because she does this. She's probably listening. Sorry, Mum. She laughs to the point of, did anybody watch that Dastardly and Motley? And it just goes into like, and she cries and she goes into like this shape. And she kind of crumples into a ball and she laughs and then she's like, ah! And makes this weird screaming sort of a laughing noise because she's so far gone. She's just, and you're like, Mum, breathe. For me, that's what I think of when I think of joy. Or that funny video was on a while ago with a baby laughing, that they're just laughing and laughing and it makes you laugh. And joy is contagious, so be careful where you use it, because you wouldn't want people thinking that Christians were happy. When you look at what God has done for us, we have absolutely no reason to not share that. And joy is amazing. I mean, I don't know if I should share that one. Funerals are obviously sad because we're saying goodbye. To be fair, the grief is ours, because if the person is going to heaven, they're grand, they're good, they're sorted. It's us that obviously we miss them, and you're sad. But I just think, I joke, I laugh, I say to Stuart, if that never happens to me, I want a big monument in the front garden, and you're never to love anybody else. You're to mourn forever. But I would like to think that when it was my time, that there would be joy. Because at the actual funeral in the church, we're all really sad, and it's a real heavy sadness. And then when you go, do you know the bit at the end where you have your tea and your sandwiches? Everybody's laughing and talking and remembering the good things and remembering joyful things. And that spreads. And does that not just lift you when you've had a hard emotional day? There's so much joy. And there's not a lot of joy in the world. I mean, people tend to try and get joy from other places, when the real joy is in God. And we have it all here. It's all here. We should be bursting at the seams to tell people about this God that heals us, that delivers us, that saves us from now. Not just, you don't get saved and then sit there in a bubble for however many years and then die and go to heaven. You can if you want, but that's super boring. People think church is boring. And yeah, a lot of times it is boring. Because what are we talking about? What are we sharing? Is it the life and the love of God? I wrote down here, if your walk with God is boring, you're doing it wrong. Why should I have to go on the internet to find a book to tell me about adventures of some girl that got saved and went through and worked in all tribes and done miracles and all this? Why should I need to go and look at a book of that? Why am I not doing it? Why am I not spreading these miracles and the love of God? It's all about the condition of your heart. Whatever's in your heart comes out. Protect your heart, not to keep yourself safe. It's to make sure that whatever you allow in comes out, and the only thing that should be coming out of us is God's love in a reality. So yes, there is pain. Yes, we go through trials and issues. We are people. Doesn't mean when you get saved, nothing bad ever happens to you. That's also not how it works, unfortunately. But the difference is, when something bad happens to you, you have a choice. Do I be raging and offended and go and tootle off to my group of friends who are my friends that will lick my wounds and tell me I'm right to be angry? That's a sycophant. I don't have any of those, by the way. None of my friends do that for me. My friends are proper friends, and they say, catch a grip of yourself. Wise up. That's just what they do, and that tends to be my approach as well. We need to stop looking at ourselves and what people are doing to us. Our vision needs to be from the inside out. I can't tell people about God's love when I am getting the rage 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon in the M2. It is none of my business if that person should or should not have a driving licence. It is none of my business if they should or should not be on the road at that point. It is my business, and I actually tried it once, it was quite funny, where I was driving, and this person was kind of getting in, and I was like, right, so I went to the fast lane, and he went to the fast lane. I'm like, but you're not going fast. So then I thought, I know what I'll do, I'll be smart, because the two motorways run beside each other, so I thought I'll go onto the slow lane of the other motorway, still overtaken, still on his right. He did that, and I'm like, okay, so he's in the slow lane going this way, so I'll go back into the fast lane. So I went back into the fast lane, and I was like, oh, Jesus, just bless this person with his sense of direction, with the skills to operate the vehicle that he is currently propelling right in front of me. Give him a decision in his head what way he's going. Give him the safety to carry out that decision of his car. I says, and Lord, please don't let me be one of those people that I don't like on the roads that are aggressive, usually passive aggressive. And you know, from there, I actually had a really, really good moment with God, and I started, to be fair, there's no real outcome of the story because I don't know where the person went because I stopped looking at them. So they could have been in front of me the whole way. I'm pretty sure it wasn't deliberate because I didn't recognize the car. But we're so quick. That's a self-righteous thing. We're so quick to say, especially things we're good at, something that we're really good at. So if you are always a positive, upbeat person that's always in a great mood, you can't really cope with people that are down all the time. And when you're somebody, like my brain goes 100 miles an hour when I'm thinking through stuff, and I love to study and I love to find like the roots of the words and what it means, and I love all that, but I am not good at some things like common sense. Now, I could write you a dissertation on neurodevelopmental disability, no bother, but my old house had lots of pictures, and it had lots of pictures, lots of different places, because there were holes in the wall. Because it turns out that walls are different. Some walls are different than other walls. And people that know what they're doing have a skill to do that. Stuart's very good at hanging pictures and doing house things. And I'm not. So he would be very good at saying to me, what are you doing? When I'm doing something completely skew with for the house. Whereas when he's trying to write something or say something and it comes out wrong, and I'd be like, what are you doing? We tend to judge from our wee pedestals, our secret ones that we put ourselves on that we don't tell anybody about. And that's not saying to have self-esteem. I have good self-esteem. I'm a good nurse. I know my stuff. Ruth's a nurse. She knows her stuff. If you needed medical attention today, it's in the front row. But when you know what you're talking about, and when you're good at it, you're very happy to tell other people. But when it's something you're not so good about, you're very quick to judge other people, but you don't really want to say about yourself. It is the state of your heart. When we have been commissioned so very clearly and repeatedly in the Bible to spread the good news, and I don't know what your definition of good is, but good news for me is me saying, do you know, actually, I know somebody that even though you're going through a terrible time, I know somebody that you'll find peace. What's it like when you can't sleep? It's horrendous when you can't sleep. Practical solutions is what we need nowadays. A friend of mine, she was having difficulty sleeping, and so were her children, and we prayed. Kids didn't wake up to 12 o'clock the next day. Getting brilliant. I was so jealous. Don't be jealous. We have the power to really turn people to the place where they need it. I can't help you, but I can show you who can. We need to stop getting on like we're so holy, because we're not. We're all sinners. But we know the answer. We know the solution. We know how to fix other people. We send them to God. That's what we do. That's what we're supposed to do. When we project a message of condemnation and hell, we are not focusing on God. We're showing what life is without Him. People know what life is without Him. When they're living out there and they're depressed and they can't cope and they can't see a way out. Why do you think suicide is such a high rate of incidence? Especially in our country. Our young people see no way out. We have it here. Shh, keep it a secret. Don't tell anyone. That's what it feels like. If you say to somebody about Christians, oh gosh, good living, you good living, I can assure you I am not. When you see me in my house, I am not good living, but I am doing my very best to live by what God tells me to. We need to change the perception of the world and Christianity. It is not an entrance exam. We need to stop saying, you need to stop doing this, this, this. Here is a 600-page document of all the things you can't do anymore. No. Imagine what it would be like if people got to know God. And instead of us shouting at them to stop sinning, imagine if they got to a place where they didn't want to. What if it wasn't an issue? Or I'm not at the place where I don't deliberately sin. I sin all the time with my attitude and things. But that's a work in progress. And God doesn't see as much what I've done, but he sees my heart, and he knows my heart is that I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to cause people to be upset. I wouldn't want that, because I wouldn't want that in me. My friends come to me because I talk straight. I say it how it is. I wasn't born with flowers. Sometimes I can carry them, but I just don't. I just think there's such a lack of reality now, even in our worship, where we're so busy singing about something that one day we're going to meet you, God. Well, how about living it? How about that person that you find that just, we all have somebody. Wasn't it Paul in the Bible that had a thorn in his side? Now, it doesn't tell you what that thorn was. Could be anywhere between sciatica and a cousin that melted his head. Doesn't tell you what it is. Tells you he never got rid of it, but he coped with it. So we all have a thorn in our side. Who or what is your thorn? And let's try a science experiment. And instead of looking at the thorn, looking at the hole in your side, knowing that it's red and itchy and sore, why don't we start praying for the thorn? That God would make it slightly less pointy, disinfected, whatever. Why don't we start praying for that person? It's usually a person because, as a person, I can vote for the fact that we're a nightmare. It's usually a person. But in this day and age, we sing about being a lighthouse. Are we, really? Are we a lighthouse? Or are we somewhere that stands and says, these are all the things you can't do in Christianity. These are the things you must stop right now because they're sins. Again, your sin is none of my business. It's my business if I start joining in with it. It's my business if I start doing it as well. None of my business. That's between you and God. That's been made very clear. And I will not change my beliefs. I have core beliefs. And I'm not going to be moved by the world and what's happening nowadays. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, maybe that's not too bad. Please don't get me wrong. I am not saying we should ever compromise on our standards or our beliefs, especially now. But you need to ask yourself, when you split it up into percentages, what's coming out of you? Is it love? Is it the excitement of telling somebody the solution to all their problems? Because that's what God is. He's not a big man with a stick that's going to beat you every time you do something wrong. He doesn't need to. We do it. We run around and do it. How many people feel not worthy? People don't come to church because they don't want to. Why would you want to? Would you go somewhere where you felt uncomfortable? Where you felt outcast? Would you go somewhere where you were told you're going to hell every 2 minutes? Or would you go somewhere that would say, do you know, I know life's hard. I know it's rubbish. But actually, I know somebody that can heal all those hurts. I know somebody that can make this right. I know somebody that will forgive you no matter what you've done. We have people in the church that we support here currently, residing under Her Majesty's leisure. And we love them. And we support them. Because we see the person and we see the heart. We don't see the sin. And that has been lost. And I just feel, however many's here today, do you know how much difference that could make to your circle this week if you try it? I remember in the news when things were flaring up again in our wee country. And I remember the news guy saying, there's bombs going off, there was widespread fear, there was everyone checking under cars, it was can we go into the city centre, can we not? It was like a flashback of the way it used to be. And I remember the guy saying, this is a group of about 300 people who were behind this. I thought, 300? And I looked it up. In the population of Northern Ireland, I didn't even include everybody, population of Northern Ireland, that was 0.004%. Now, hang on. If you're going into an operation and the surgeon says to you, you have a 0.004% of getting through this, not great odds. I can't say I have seen worse than that because they just wouldn't do it. So if 300 people can cause widespread fear and a whole police force to mobilise into doing all these other operations and going looking for things, what can 300 Christians do that are actual Christians, that are Christ-like, that are spreading the love of God and the word of God? When you're in that position of being sin-free, by all means start flinging stones at people. I can tell you now, I don't think I'll ever be there. 16-year-old me was there. I was blameless. It's great. But I had to pay for it later on. We are responsible for our own walk, nobody else's. And I've written here, thank God. I don't want to be responsible for what you're doing. I can barely be responsible for what I'm doing. It's like a daily thing, and it's not even daily. I can get up in the morning feeling full of the love of God, and by 10 o'clock, I'm like, oh God, give me patience. What is it, that saying? Give me patience, because if you give me strength, I'm going to kill somebody. We're all people. We're all in this together. Us in this room and everybody out there. We're all just trying to get through this life. The difference is we've something to get through it for. We have a reason to get up in the morning. And that's why when you are feeling, I'm not saying when you're a Christian you don't get depressed or you don't get down. Of course you do. Nobody wants you to be happy. But that's what community's for. That's what family's for. That's what we're all for together. To build each other up. It says that in the Bible. Build each other up. Edify. And people misunderstand edify. Edify doesn't mean be nice all the time. Edify means to build up and to strengthen. And sometimes building up and strengthen means I have to go into a room with my granny. And then I come out different. Slightly shorter. I just think if we focused on what was important, which is God, the whole point of everything is God. I don't want to see my friends struggling through life. My focus isn't just to get them saved so they're in. I want my friends to be happy. I want them to be joyful. I want them to have everything their hearts desired. I want them to live every day knowing that it's all right. No matter what comes, it'll be all right. We are so busy looking at the sin. We're so busy. And there is teaching and there's wisdom in how to live your life. Absolutely. There are standards we need to live by. Absolutely. But unless you're a teacher and people come to you for instruction, that's not your place. Our place is to spread the love of God, the real love of God. Not our rubbish version of love that does very little, to be fair. I remember seeing on TV, I don't know if you're allowed to mention names, some guy that was famous who had fallen in love with somebody, some girl, and he was jumping on the sofa and screaming and shouting, I love her, I love her. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? And this public display on a public chat show, I love her, she's amazing, I want to give my life to her. They are divorced now. And yeah, there's circumstances and things happen, that's fair enough. But what I'm saying is, our version of love is rubbish. So if you can take a second and think about something you really love, think about somebody that you really, 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 really love. Don't tell anyone else who it is in case you offend them, because it's not them. And think about this. Are you patient? Are you kind? Are you jealous? Are you boastful or proud? Are you rude? Do you demand your own way? How many times have we heard that? If you loved me, you would. I laugh. I'm like, fastest way out my door. See you. It keeps no record of being wronged. That's a hard one. Because we're all so good at keeping records of everybody else's wrongs. Talking to myself as well, just in case offence sneaks in there. Is it irritable? Do you be irritable? I do. I mean, there's times I have to just walk the opposite direction from my husband. I love him, but he irritates me. But that's the difference. Is that God's love I'm showing? No. You'll be listening to this going, ha. It does not rejoice about injustice. Do you know what that one's for? Slap it up and had it coming. Many times have we said that. Had it coming to him. Ooh, careful. Glass house. It rejoices whenever the truth wins out. So, you can be joyful about justice. It's not saying you have to be all subdued and, oh, that was good. Yes, love rejoices when the truth comes out, because the truth is important. There's very little truth nowadays. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and it endures through every circumstance. And I don't know about you. That's a hard one to measure up to. And I can tell you now, that's not human love. That's not brotherly love. That's not family love at all. That is agape. That is God's love. That is so far beyond what our little heads can understand. I would encourage you, as David did, to search your heart, to check what state it's in, what's coming out of it. Do people avoid you? Do people not want to spend time with you because you're always negative? To know and experience the freedom of God as a blessing. There's such a freedom in it. We need to tell people about what he's done for us, what he continues to do. Stop making it look like an impossible task. It's God's job to figure out the details. I am not smart enough to know how God's going to do it. I have no idea most of the time. I don't know why a lot of things happen. I don't know. What I know is that God's love needs to stop being such a protected secret. MI5 or whatever. We need to be honest. And if you're in a position where you struggle to be positive, you need to find out why. And I'm not talking about through seasons. We all have seasons where we endure trauma, where we have pain. Those things are separate issues that need worked on, that need healed. But if you get past that and you still find yourself way down the line being bitter and being angry, and it's not about just other people, it's about you. Do you not want to be free? Do you not want to be free of that anger? I don't know about you, but anger makes me super tired. You know when you have a proper rage? I'm sure you don't. I'll explain because these are better. When you're really angry, it's like you vibrate and you just think, and you can almost visualize that if you stomped the ground, the house would fall down. You're like that level of rage. And afterwards, when you eventually calm down, which could be anywhere between half an hour, days, depending on how raging you are, you're super tired. Your body's tired. Your hip gets sore. You're wiped out. And you need rest and you need to sleep it off and then you need to go and deal with it after. I try now to live my life where I don't commit the crimes that I need to go back and pay for. I still do, but I try. So I would just encourage today, and I get so much out of this. This was God, I feel, very much as well speaking to me, because again, I need to love better. I need to love more. I need to pray for people that melt my head. So it's not about me. It's not about me. And there's a world out there that is hurting and crying to be saved. That the people making the decisions are not listening to God, and we need to be the voice. We need to be that love. If you go out and you say to somebody, do you know there is such a love that makes everything okay? People look for love all the time. They look for peace all the time. Sometimes the only time people can find peace is by getting high on drugs, or by eating everything, or they just look for love in all the wrong places. And it's here, and we know about it, and we have it. But we have doubled our job, because the church in the past, the history of the church has spent so long making everybody feel so unworthy. And don't get me wrong, we're unworthy. We're all unworthy. Not the point. We're worthy in his eyes. And how do we get people out there to find that freedom and to find that joy and to find that peace? By bringing them to God. If you look at yourself on a snapshot, would you spend time with you? I remember the pastor saying once about somebody just being, it was like a cartoon he was talking about that he had seen, that a really sad person, and they were just really flat, and they were like, do you want what I have? It's Jesus. And you'd be like, whoa, no, thanks. Keep that. But if you see somebody that's happy and joyful and actually progressing through life, and that doesn't just mean if they're doing well or promotion or they have a big house. If you see somebody that's content with what they have, and that just, you love being near them because they just make you feel nice. And we have a God that he comes down to us in his presence, and you can feel that peace that just wraps around you, that love that just, it's almost like you can't see what's hurting anymore. It's like anesthetic. It's great. And we need to share that with the world. We need to show them a true representation of Jesus, not what we have warped him into, not what we have made up through religion. God, forgive us for being religious. Has done nothing but harm to people. Religion. He doesn't want religion. He wants relationship. He wants you. He wants to know you. He wants your heart. He wants to talk to you every day. If you love somebody, especially at the start, you want to spend every day with them and every minute with them, and you're texting them all the time. That never ends with God. My dog is called Tiny. The children have retrained her to answer the Thunder Muffin. And she is a wee Shih Tzu. And she has no understanding of boundaries. She assumes everybody loves her. Anything less than openly assaulting that dog, she takes as an invitation. She loves us unconditionally. She really does. And that's the most unconditional love I ever see, is from that dog. Sometimes she's a bit close, but there's a resilience in her, and there's a purity in her that she just loves. Just gives out all this love. And we miss that because we're so busy looking at the rules. 1 Corinthians 13:13 says, 3 things will last forever: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Love is not weakness. If love was weak, we wouldn't have crimes of passion. Love is not something that ever asks you to compromise on what God's word is. The whole, if you loved me. It rejoices in truth, so obviously love will rejoice in the truth of God. So this week, do your experiment. Try it and see, just for a week or a day. Try and see what changes when you look at people in love. And again, don't keep putting yourself into positions where you know somebody's going to take advantage of you. There is wisdom in this. But if you can just ask God just for a wee glint of what it's like to feel his love towards other people, you'll find that they don't bother you as much. You'll find it's not as big a deal, even if they're doing the same thing and the same thing. You'll find that it doesn't annoy you as much because you're stopped looking at yourself and how you feel. So that's all I wanted really to bring, as I just felt God was saying that over the space of time we have lost the power, the respect and the understanding of his love for all of us. It's hard to understand when you don't see it, and we are guilty of not showing it. How else does the world see God's love if it's not through his children? Lord, I just ask today that you give us insight. Lord, just fill us, because there's times when we go through hard times and we have pain in us, Lord. So we just ask that you heal that in us and that you replace our pain and our bitterness, Lord, with your peace and your love. That we find our atmosphere changing and our moods changing and our attitudes changing. Lord, show us what it is to be grateful. Show us what it is to flow with your love and your understanding of how that works. Lord, let's be a light this week to other people. You know, you don't always need to preach. Sometimes you just need to shine. People will feel the love of God on you. So Lord, I just ask that you give us wisdom this week. Where to go. Many lives have been saved in Tesco's because somebody bumped into somebody that just made them feel really good when they felt so awful for so long. God, forgive us for religion. God, forgive us for seeing ourselves and how we feel more than what we're here for. Forgive us for our selfishness at keeping your freedom and your love for ourselves and not bringing that out into the world in its pure form without us putting conditions on it. I'll love you if. Can't love you, you're in that group. Can't love you. No, you do that, you do that. That's not how it works. God, just destroy those boundaries that we place in our own heads. Tear down that self-righteousness that makes us feel we have the authority to choose who is righteous before God and who isn't. Because I don't want to be judged. So I don't want to be standing in a plane of judgment. God, help us to have the capacity to love through hard times. Teach us to take a step back and not automatically attack when we've been hurt. That is your domain. That is your issue, Lord. And God, thank you for loving us, warts and all. And for continually forgiving us when we just keep doing it. God, show us a joy this week. Give us laughter that we haven't had in so long. That bubbles up right from your belly. Makes you sound like Dastardly and Motley. Laugh like nobody's listening, like nobody's watching. That joy that is God's and is in within us now. If anybody wants prayer, we'll have a leadership team. You can either come up to the front or you can have room service where you are. Just lift your hand if you're wanting any sort of prayer for anything. One God kind of does all, so. And thank you for listening. Amen. Or you